Welcome to Spiritual as Fuck,
Spiritual as fuck.
a podcast where we explore everything outside of the ordinary. I'm Liz Volpe. I'm a social entrepreneur, now psychic medium, teacher and mentor, with a huge passion to inspire people to dream big and change the world.
I'm Diane Driscoll, a coach, facilitator and speaker. I'm also a psychic intuitive, learning to incorporate my spiritual gifts into my life and business.
We're here today to share real and raw spiritual stories. It's going to give you a safe space to challenge what's normal and have some serious fun along the way.
We hope you're ready to get spiritual as fuck. Hey everyone, Diane here. Yep, we are doing this. This episode was so much fun. Our first episode together, and we had no idea where it was going to go, but we trusted that our intuition would take us through. In this episode, we share some of our personal stories on our journey to becoming spiritual as fuck. From childhood experiences of knowing that a house was haunted, responding to the sense of anger in the room at a corporate event, pre-empting a car crash, right through to the relief of realizing that we're not going crazy. We also explored the differences between those inner voices that we all have in our heads, the voice of intuition and ego. And because we're all about practical application, we set you a challenge to start building your own intuition. We absolutely love hearing stories from others, so please tell us how you get on with the challenge or share your personal spiritual as fuck stories via our Instagram page at spiritual.a.f.
So this is the very first episode of Spiritual as Fuck. We are so excited because this has been a long time in the coming, hasn't it, Diane?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'm going to be really honest, we have no idea what is going to happen over this first episode, let alone any others moving forward. Because I'm not sure about you, but since being on a spiritual journey, I've learned not to plan too much and to surrender and go with the flow and just trust that it's all going to be okay. So that is really what Spiritual as Fuck is all about. So let's see how we go today, and hopefully you enjoy it as much as we do. So I'm going to start off with a story of how Diane and I met, because it is all actually quite a bizarre story.
Definitely.
Very weird that we're sat in a room together here today, because we first crossed paths back in 2019, and you were in your business sense and I was in my business sense, and you know, we met each other with that corporate conversation, all very professional, although I liked you straight away, Diane.
That's good to know.
Yes. And all these years later, you know, I took this step out of my closet spiritually, and I started this secret Instagram page called The Masked Medium. And, you know, I hadn't really told anybody about it at all. For a year, I hid behind this name of The Masked Medium. And then all of a sudden one day I woke up to a follow from you. From you! And I remember the first thing coming through my mind, oh no, you know, someone that knows me just for business has actually found out the fact that I am the masked medium. And I think I actually stopped breathing for a couple of seconds, Diane. Until then I thought, well, there's nothing I can do now. My face is on this. She's going to know it's me. I can't hide. I'm going to have to put my hand up and send you a quick message.
Yeah.
Do you remember what I sent you?
Yes, it's so funny. How did you find me on here? It's funny because for me, I had been following a lot of card readers. Like, I've done tarot cards since I was a teenager, but I've been following some tarot readers, and I was scrolling through Instagram and it was like, oh my God, that's Liz. That's Liz. And I only knew you in your professional capacity. And then I thought, oh, maybe I just didn't know this about you. Maybe you've always done this. And then it was like, oh, the masked medium. So it was just that fact that we were both coming out of the spiritual closet around the same time.
How bizarre. And after that, I think we had a quick conversation where we didn't stop talking for about half an hour straight,
yeah.
Relating to the spiritual awakenings that we'd both been through. And what was really funny was for the week after that, I was getting a lot of channel downloads. And I woke up one day to a very strong message from my guides saying that I had to start a podcast. And up until that point, I'd never been interested in doing a podcast. It was the last thing that I would have ever considered doing. So I sat with that. I wrote that down, as I always do with all of my messages, and I thought, okay. And then what happened for the days after that was every time the idea of the podcast came into my head, it got followed by your little smiley face popping into my third eye. And it happened for quite a few days. Eventually I was like, okay, I understand. I've got to call Diane and ask her to co-host this podcast. So that's exactly what I did. I think the conversation started like, Diane, you don't have to say yes straight away, but look, I've got this idea and it's come from above. Will you co-host the podcast with me? And you told me you'd think about it.
Yes, I wanted to say yes straight away, but it was you started the conversation with, this is going to come out of the blue. This is, going to be unexpected. I don't want you to answer me straight away. I want you to take it away. And my whole body was full body. Yes, I want to do this. But I was very glad that you asked me to take the time, because I was ready. Like, it didn't bother me coming out of the spiritual closet, but you think that all of our stories have a knock-on impact on our family members and on our businesses. So for me, it was like, okay, take some consideration for this. But yeah, it was always going to be a yes.
Yes,
Absolutely.
thank goodness. Thank
Here
goodness. Here we are, and we are so excited to start to go into our stories today. And then over the next few episodes, we are going to take you on a journey. So whether or not you're just spiritually curious, whether you have been out of your spiritual closet for 20 years, I don't think it's really going to matter. We are going to invite in some super interesting guests. And just to entice you a little bit, our first guest is so exciting for us.
We're like two fangirls.
We are absolutely fangirls. So we will explain that later. But for today, let's actually delve into our spiritual stories, because Diane, I know that yours is very different to mine.
Yes.
How did this start for you?
Oh gosh, I think now it's easy to look at it and say, okay, so much of this has been a thread through my whole life. So, I have always been interested in all things paranormal, all things spiritual, that connection to the universe, that sense of being part of something greater, to the point where even as a child, I remember, because I think I got this through my dad's side of the family and my granny, who was very religious, very, Irish Catholic, but very much open to all things paranormal. So I, as a kid, used to read books in my granny's house, all things strange and interesting, near-death experiences, aliens, UFOs, ESP, all of the language. It's funny because so many of these terms are old now. That just shows how long ago it is. But I had always been fascinated by this, and carried that with me. To the point that I think when I was in high school, in secondary school, because I'm a very science-based person, I'm very scientific in my thinking, but in my chemistry class or physics class, it was hearing about the law of conservation of energy, that energy can't be created nor destroyed, but transformed from one form to the next. And for me, it was like, that embodied my sense of being connected to the universe, being connected to, I loved astronomy. So that was one of the first things, just realizing, I'm part of something bigger, but it has been a thread through my entire life. But then you go through, for me, and I feel you're somewhat similar. We get married, we get the job, we get all the weight of responsibility, and all of that spiritual stuff just got parked. And for me now, it's very much a case of, in my 40s, that's where I started to awaken. That's when it was like, hey, you used to love all of this stuff. Hey, this is coming back to meet you again. And what about for you?
Yes, I'm so similar to you. And it's only been as an adult that I can now look back and join these dots of all of the incredible, mystical, magical experiences that I now understand to be, psychic ability and just amazing intuitive synchronicities. But looking right back, my first memories honestly started when I was about probably between 7 to 9. And my dad lived in a very old, scary house back in England. It was this big 4 or 5 level house. And I instantly knew the minute we moved into that house that it was haunted. And I was petrified. every time I walked up the stairs, I didn't ever walk. I ran because it always felt like somebody was behind me. And, you know, I'd complain every day to my dad about this, like, Dad, it's haunted, there's someone watching me. He would always be like, Liz, it's your imagination, you know, don't worry. But it got to the point where for years of living in this house, even up to the point where I was a teenager, I always slept with every single bit of me underneath cover. You know, my entire head would be under the cover because I could sense different spirits walking around. And I used to actually say inside my head, and sometimes even out loud, please, can you just walk down the other side of the hall so I can run to the toilet? And I would, you know, I would actually sense some, whoever it was, moving away, and then I'd lob it fast as I possibly could to the toilet and jump back into bed. Yeah, so that's how I grew up. And I remember that so well. That was the first step into spirituality, which was a scary step.
Yeah.
And it's something I've had to work on actually now. You know, so I guess feeling and sensing energy has always been there for me.
Yeah.
Another story just quickly that comes to mind is I went to Brisbane in my early 20s to stay in a hotel and just checked in, went to the room, opened the door of the hotel room, and literally it felt like I got hit in the face by like an ice block. And I was like, oh, there is no way I can stay in this room. Oh. And the person that was with me looked at me like I was absolutely crazy. I was like, what on earth are you talking about? And I said, there is a very strong spirit in this room. I'm sorry, you're going to need to call reception because I'm not stepping over that line. Please go and sort this out. And they went and, you know, felt really foolish and phoned reception, said, I'm so sorry, but my friend won't stay in this room. Anyway, a few minutes later, we checked into another room and walked past reception. And the lady at the hotel lobby said to me, what actually did you feel in there? And I explained, and she said, yeah, actually.
Oh, wow.
Many guests have told us this about this exact room. Actually, a man passed away in it about 5 years ago.
Gosh, so to be validated.
Big validation.
That, yeah, rather than thinking, okay, we've just got a really high maintenance customer on our hands here.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. And I'm so different because for me, you know, your gift of being able to tune into spirits and really sensing spirits, I don't have that, but I'm very much more that sensing and feeling. So claircognizance, clairsentience. So I feel things in my body, like I feel, and particularly the dynamics of the energy in a room. So in my corporate role, when I'm facilitating, I can just sense what's needed from people in that moment in time. And I also get that sense of, I just know stuff. No idea why I know it, no idea, I cannot explain it, there's no scientific reason for it, but I just know that I know that I know. And they're the things that now looking back, I can look back and see so many times in my career where I have taken a chance on either leaving a job and, you know, putting my career on the line by going and facilitating a session where I muscled. There was a time where I had to fly to the US to this, you know, leadership convention that was part of the organization I worked for. And I was just supposed to be there as a guest, like pretty much to wave on stage as being part of a project team. But when I realized what we were presenting, I could feel the anger in the room that was going to be directed towards us, and that we as a project team were literally digging our own grave. And for me, it was like, okay, I've got two choices. I either let this happen, or I tune into the fact that I can sense this and I know the knock-on implication of it is. And I just trusted my gut, and I thought, okay, what's the worst that can happen? I can get fired if I totally misread this. But I went to the lead of the project and I just said, this is what I think we need to do. Do you trust me? So I ended up totally winging it, facilitating a session based on the energy in the room. No idea. Like, I knew where I needed to get people to. And the feedback that I got afterwards was just incredible. It was exactly, people had flown in from all over the US and all over the globe to be at this session. And we were planning to just present the exact same information that we had presented the previous 3 months. So it's almost like nothing had changed. I'm like, you can't do that. We can't do that. And I literally was 100% intuitive led. I just knew the energy in the room, knew what people needed. But at the time, if someone had said to me, oh, would you believe you're a psychic intuitive? No, I thought I was empathetic. That was about it. But that for me is, everything for me is very much feeling related, that feeling of the energy and knowing stuff, but not necessarily yeah, tapping into spirit. So I love hearing the stories from you, because it's not like we know each other's stories either.
Yeah, wow, I actually find that really interesting because I'm similar and I've built a business on being able to feel and read the people around me. And I think that's why I've always done okay in
Yeah.
business. But I actually think that there's so many people out there that this exact thing is happening,
Yes.
but would never dream of it having a name or being a psychic sense
Yes.
as such. And I think, we're all now realizing that people are a little bit more curious. People are starting to question things in their own life and starting to go, well, I do have gut feelings, or I am very intuitive.
Yeah.
What would you suggest people do if they're starting to become curious or starting to look and realize that they are very intuitive?
Yeah, I think for me, when I look back at it, and because so much of what I do in my work is related to change, so embracing change, and what I did in my spiritual journey was anytime that I'm resisting against it. So it's like, okay, Diane, you're feeling this and you're not actually following through with it. That is where I have ended up having, this kind of slap in the face of, okay, you need to wake up, or the sense that, you get into a whole dark night of the soul because you're absolutely resisting things so much. So, when I was researching a lot of this spirituality stuff, first of all, I was hearing the word surrender, and, it was annoying. It was, what do you mean surrender? I don't know how to surrender. But it is just step out of your intellect. Like, I'm highly intellect driven. So get out of your intellect and trust that that will actually happen naturally for you. Go from your heart, go from your intuition, or your inner compass, as I call it. Body is a huge amount of information that we disregard. So what are you feeling? What are you sensing in your body? And just trust that it's guiding you in a place. Again, here's the scientist in me. Treat yourself like an experiment, that it's like, oh, what if I don't follow my intellect? What if I don't risk assess this? What if I just actually go with my gut feel? What if I just follow my heart or my intuition? And do that for a week and see what turns up for you. Because the more I do that, the more, my mind is just blown how much my life has changed in the last year and a half since all of this has started happening. And, have I mastered it? Absolutely not. Am I still a mess most days of the week? Yes. But it fascinates me that this shit really works. If you surrender to it, if you just follow your inner guidance, your inner compass, it blows my mind.
Yeah, I find it funny that the minute that you have awareness, just even on one time that your intuition was correct, and you focus on that and you build on that energy, all of a sudden these signs and synchronicities and evidence just kind of piles on top of each other. So it's like a snowball. Once you start to look at, am I intuitive? How am I intuitive? And you start to keep track of it.
Yeah.
Now, I always say when I'm teaching people about this type of stuff, journal everything. Have a notes page on your phone and write down everything. Notice your gut feelings, your hunches, when you overhear that conversation on the bus, which just relates to you at that very second.
Yeah.
Because this is actually how our intuition and how the universe speaks to us. And it's not just to us, right? This is to everybody.
Yeah.
That inner GPS is there, and really it's just about turning your senses on yourself, actually making the decision to become aware of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes the hunches and the gut feelings are stronger than others. If we're looking back, there are some key times in my life where there's no way that I could ignore it.
Yes.
The one particular memory that comes to mind as a young girl, way before I realised anything about intuition, I probably didn't even understand the word intuition at that age. But I remember driving in a car, having a great time with a bunch of teenagers, and about 30 seconds before a crash happening, I knew that it was going to happen. And I remember, I don't know how the message came, it was just a very strong inner knowing. And without even thinking about it, I instantly went into the brace position and was sat with my head between my legs, and obviously making sure that my head and my face were okay. And we had a really serious crash. Luckily, everybody was fine. But after that, I remember thinking, how did I know that information? Yeah. So that was a big turning point actually in my late teen years, going, there is something out there here.
Yeah.
You know, these feelings and senses I have had from being young, that was evidence really clearly for me there.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure if everyone took the time to look at their life, there would be something at some point
Yeah.
that was unexplainable.
Yeah. I think too, for me, because when I was doing my own research or trying to figure out what is going on with me right now, that it's like, okay, I hear people talking about these hunches, these intuitions and things, but how do I differentiate? Because my spiritual journey is very tightly woven with my mental health journey. So my negative voice can be quite loud in my head. So it's like, okay, is that my intuition or is that fear? But if you're trying to figure out how do I follow this intuitive hit that I'm getting, it will never come from fear. It always comes, it's quieter than that negative voice you have in your head. It's so much softer and subtler until you're not listening to it anymore, and then it'll come in with a bang. But originally it's so quiet. It's like a little whisper that comes into your voice, or a feeling or sense that you get. And it's never something that you feel frightened of or that's contracting in any way. It's very much a case of what if, or that you feel it's kind of pulling you along a path. And when I started to realize that, that's the difference between those two voices in my head. And I know that sounds crazy. Oh, she's listening to all these voices in her head. But I do. But the quiet one, and now that I've tuned into that, that's now become the predominant voice in my head. And I will always ask myself, because I'm a bit feeling like a person, that how does this feel in my body? Is this something that is good, makes me feel expansive, or is it something that makes me feel contracted and I, don't want to follow it, or I'm doing it out of fear? But it's, listen to that voice, follow it, just do the experiment and kind of, journal it, write down all of the things that you're experiencing, build up that bank of evidence to say, there's something in this. And it's not just you and me or people who claim to be intuitive or psychic. It's we all have this available to us, all of us.
Absolutely. And yes, I love that you've just brought up that difference between, the negative part of your mind, which is the ego.
Yeah.
I always have people asking, how do I know the difference, from the voice in my head to the real intuition inside? And you're absolutely right. The ego will always speak from that negative place of judgment or scarcity. And when you're trying to make a decision and you're really trying to tap into your intuition, that can be very loud. Your ego, your rational thinking mind is always going to be the loudest at first. And you've got to get underneath that. And for me, the easiest way to get underneath and push aside that horrible negative voice is to go into and just do really simple things like just short meditations every morning. It's just kind of coming back to that mindfulness and that just being with yourself. Because how many times do you need to make a decision and you go and speak to every friend, every family member, and then you listen to your mind? And one big way you always know that it's your ego speaking is that you change your mind 50 times. So you're constantly changing your mind. That is how you know it is not intuition speaking. But if it's just suddenly that voice that, it does come with the love, with the inner knowing, that is telling you that is the decision and the right way to go.
And we shouldn't give ourselves a hard time. As a coach, when I have people that I'm, we're going through a coaching session, there is that sense too that, your ego, that negative voice, is trying to keep you safe. It's trying to keep you protected. So it's not a bad thing, but just know that its job is to keep you safe. But being safe does not, it doesn't serve any of us. And, we all are so much greater than we think we are. So if we listen to our intuition, it's the thing that's going to have us be better in the world, to contribute more in the world, to do things like this that we never thought that we, a spiritual as fuck podcast, me and Liz, really? But it's like we're doing this because we're led by intuition, not because our ego would have let both of us, that negative voice would have said, no, this is going to impact your business. No, this is going to impact your family. No, you might not be able to pay the bills next month if you don't do the work that you've been doing up until now. So just, trusting that intuition. But the ego, while we call it a negative voice, it's acknowledge the fact it's just there to keep me safe. But do I need to be safe? No.
Have an adventure.
Exactly. Woohoo!
There's nothing more boring than always planning everything.
Yeah.
And it can be as simple as waking up in the morning and go, today I'm only going to listen to my intuition, take me where I need to go.
Yeah.
And just see what happens.
Yeah.
maybe that's a challenge for you guys listening today. Like, actually give that a go. Wake up tomorrow morning, do a 5-minute meditation, and set the intention with the universe that today you're going to just follow your intuition. And honestly, if you could record it, it'd probably be a really fun, awesome day. And I guarantee that you will feel more fulfilled and happier by purely following that inner voice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, there are so many things that we can share. I know that in the next episode, we're going to be delving into our spiritual awakenings, which wasn't pretty for me.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
I know, looking back, I've had a few spiritual awakenings. The first couple were nice and gentle. The last one, not so gentle, and literally woke me up and made me look at my entire life and question absolutely everything. And it's not always going to be easy. We're going to share all of those experiences on the next show. And after that, we are going to be bringing in some incredible guests that are also going to share their real and raw story. So this podcast is not going to include any of the fluffy, nice, just all the positive stuff. This is going to be the real and the raw, the down and the dirty.
Down and dirty. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
That is right. So we hope you enjoyed this first episode. We cannot wait to get stuck into episode 2. And please reach out to us. Make sure you're following us on Instagram. And all of the ways to contact us are in the show notes as well. And we can't wait to get spiritual as fuck with you on the next episode.
Bring it on. That's it for another episode.
Thank you for listening. Did you know that we are building a movement of 1 million people who are spiritual as fuck? We would love for you to join us. You can start by leaving us a review on Apple Podcast. Every month, I'm going to intuitively choose one person and do a psychic reading for you. So
follow us on Instagram, send in your stories and topic suggestions, and join the movement
at spiritual.a.f. Until next time.